Okay, welcome to the Future Tech Podcast, number 17 maybe. I'm your pilot, Nolan Michaels. So I just checked on my phone if I had access to GPT-4's new features, that being image creation and image recognition and being able to talk to it with your voice. I don't really know what it's called. Is it like the conversation thing? Either way, I don't have it yet. Haven't been updated. It hasn't rolled out to Canada yet. I mean, to me in Canada, I'm sure other people have it. And I do check a few times a day because I'm really curious. And there are some, how do I put this? There are some interesting observations so far. Mainly that you can access Dalle 3 through Bing or through GPT. And all of the cool pictures you're seeing online have been made through Bing, for sure. On Bing, there really is no censorship, for lack of a better word. When you try and create through GPT, it will say no to you over and over again, it seems. Anytime you try and make anything to do with something that's copywritten, like, is that the right word? Copyrighted? Copywritten? Copyrighted. Anything that is copyrighted. Okay, maybe that's how you say it. Anything you try to generate that has to do with intellectual property, it's just going to refuse now. It's not going to do any pictures of people. It's not going to do any TV characters, cartoon characters, movie property like the Alien or a Predator. It just flat out refuses to do it. And I don't know how I feel about that. On one hand, probably a good thing that if you had something that you created and you copyrighted it, copywrote it, what is the right way to, and if you had something you wanted to protect, it'd be nice if an AI wasn't digging through your stuff and replicating it. However, if you are a company creating an AI, you have to understand that 99.9% of your customers are going to want to prompt for something that already exists. It's very hard to have an imagination these days, apparently. And I would have loved to have tested this by now, but like I said, I don't have access to it. Okay, so it won't make you a picture of the Predator eating Kellogg's cornflakes because those two things already exist and you can't use them without the proper permission. But could you describe what the Predator looks like, or say, I want to see an image of a anthropomorphic monster that looks like the Predator? Can you get around the copyright issues that way? Is that just another form of jailbreaking, as it were, where OpenAI has set these guidelines for GPT, but if you word something, if you word your query in a certain way, it tricks the AI basically. Will you be able to trick the AI by just saying, I want to see Pikachu, but not Pikachu, and it'll be like, oh, okay, I'll show you something that looks like Pikachu? I don't know. Because some of the images that people are making are so good, like using intellectual property in their prompts, specifically on Bing, because that's where you're allowed to do it. You are able to see the true capabilities of Dalle. It's able to take these crazy details and combine them together, like these old Super Nintendo game covers that you'll see, where it's like Stranger Things on the Super Nintendo, and it's 11 and it's everyone and it's looks really, really good. If you couldn't use intellectual property, I don't know if we'd be able to understand the capabilities in the same way. It might be harder for us to really see the potential because you'd be seeing everything for the first time rather than taking something new and placing it in the old. I don't think we'd have a reference for something that was completely made up. And I guess I want to talk about, why is there a difference between Bing and GPT? Bing uses GPT. Why would there be two different sets of standards from the same company, essentially? And like, I can't imagine that's going to last long. But why would it happen in the first place? If GPT is strict on censorship in terms of intellectual property, why wouldn't Bing be just as strict if it's the same thing? Bing is GPT. It's a carefully crocheted version of GPT, but it's the same thing. Or is it that Bing is using an older version of GPT, which was given access to Dalle 3, rather than being the new GPT, which also uses Dalle. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, is Bing just needing to be updated, and then it will have all of the, I just keep calling it censorship, but I don't really know what the right word is. I wonder if there's going to be some sort of overseas AI like the Pirate Bay that just runs on intellectual property and you can go and use that without any repercussions. I know they've tried to shut down the Pirate Bay, but they've just been unable to. I don't know if it's like international law or if they literally can't pinpoint the people who made the website. But is there going to be an AI that just exists on the web and doesn't have a home port, and then you would be able to use it? But I know in Canada, at least, if we were to use the Pirate Bay, technically they know we're using it. And I've gotten an email before that said, like, you know, the Canadian government wants to know who you are, but thanks to our privacy standards or whatever, we're not sharing that with the government. This was from like my cable provider, my internet provider. They said that the government's trying to find out who you are, but we're not going to tell them. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And that leads you to a VPN, where, again, theoretically, you'd be able to hide yourself and access things around the world. So if there was an AI that could create without censorship, is it just going to be accessible through a VPN? Like, if that is true and that actually happens, no, like, how is OpenAI ever going to make their money back if they just keep neutering their AI? And I know intellectual property is a sacred place because, like I said, you don't want your shit getting stolen, and therefore you shouldn't steal other people's stuff. But, like, where's the fun in create, like, oh my, to not be able to reference another artist? Like, that is something that GP said it wasn't going to be able to do. It wasn't going to let you prompt for a living artist. Like, that is, do they know how most people prompt? Do they know what their audience uses their service for? And another thing I found really interesting is that, like, the way you interact with GPT and Dalle is that you ask for Pikachu versus the Terminator, a movie poster of Pikachu versus the Terminator. And it says okay, and then it doesn't run those exact words. It writes prompts behind the scenes and then runs them and then provides you the pictures. So you think you inputted just a couple of words and got these sick pictures, but in reality, GPT did all the work behind the scenes of crafting the prompts, and then it's just giving you the output. But it's not going to show you the prompt. It won't show you the prompt. It's not teaching you actually how to make these things, which I found to be really interesting, that there is it's a one-way highway. It's a really fast highway, but they don't want you going the other way. They don't want you to take any lessons from it, which I think is very strange. It gives me like a weird vibe, like some extra controlling level of vibe where it's like, what are you doing? Like, you'll make these crazy pictures for me, but you're not going to tell me how you did it. Like, are you trying to keep people dumb? Like, that's not, I don't actually think that. Or just like, what would be the purpose of not telling people what the prompt was? How does that get through the planning phase? Like, I understand the idea of provide something simple, let GPT run more complex prompts in the background. But who pipes up and says, yeah, and actually don't tell the human what you did to create it? And then who agreed with that person? Why would there be any block of information? Why would there be any barrier to how something was made, especially when, like, why can't you see the ingredients? That's what I want to know. You ask for a steak dinner, okay, they'll give you a nice big plate of food. It's steak, it's potatoes, blah, blah, blah. But why can't you see the list of ingredients that's used to make it? And maybe restaurants don't really do that completely. Like, is the recipe protected? I don't know. That's interesting. The reason I brought this up is because somebody noticed that they were able to see the prompt that was used. And I think it's because they either tried it on their phone, and when it was rejected, they went onto the website and they were able to see the rejected prompts. Something like that. But nonetheless, This person wanted to create a movie poster for a Pokemon Dragon Ball Z crossover. GPT sends the message, I apologize, but I'm unable to generate images for Pokemon Dragon Ball Z crossover movie poster due to our content policy. But it shows the Dalle 3 errors. And take a look at these prompts. So all he asked was for a movie poster, Pokemon Dragon Ball crossover. One of the prompts that was created. Photo, movie poster featuring Goku and Pikachu standing back to back in a dramatic pose with sun setting in the background. The title, Pokemon X Dragon Ball Z Worlds Collide, is emblazoned at the top, with silhouettes of other characters from both series in the distance. Wouldn't that be a learning opportunity for whoever is using this? Like, hey, you asked for this. I think you meant all of this. Like, why wouldn't you want to teach people? Why wouldn't the person want to know? Obviously, the person would want to know. And then that you'd be able to take that into other image generators. And maybe that's what they don't want. I'm actually stumped about this. I have no idea why this information would be protected. You are not supposed to be able to see the prompts that GPT used to create your images. And due to this error, we have a bit of a glimpse. But there are 3 more. Maybe I'll read them. Illustration of a movie poster where Ash Ketchum and Vegeta are preparing to battle. Behind them, a split background shows the Pokemon world on one side and the Dragon Ball Z universe on the other. The title, Pokemon vs. Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Showdown, is displayed prominently. I have a feeling that Midjourney version 6 is going to be able to handle a prompt like that really well. And, people have come at Midjourney for their censorship and their PG-13 way of doing things, where you can't prompt for a bikini and you can't use a word like lust. Like you cannot imply seduction. You can't imply anything adult-oriented. And people have been really critical of that because it's like, I'm an adult, let me do what I want. I understand why they don't allow that kind of thing, but I think it's far more interesting that other AIs are overstepping that even and cracking down even harder. And maybe it's just an intellectual property thing, but either way, censorship is not taken lightly from people paying for a service. And isn't the thing about intellectual property that it's a problem when you try to make money off of it? Like, you can't print pictures of Pikachu and then sell them. That makes sense. But you're telling me I can't create pictures of Pikachu? You can't commission an artist to create pictures of Pikachu? It's like, I think you can create one piece of art. You could, if someone asked you to draw a picture of the cast of Stranger Things, you could do it. But I don't think you could take that picture and then digitally distribute it and sell it to a bunch of people. I am not a lawyer. I am not an expert in any way on copyright, but I think that's how it works. And if you are able to draw a picture in Photoshop of a Pokemon and a Dragon Ball Z crossover, why are you not allowed to ask for it to be drawn for you? I don't understand. Did they just not want to be in the headlines for copyright, yet inadvertently, because they're so hard against it, they're in the news for copyright? Like, what are they doing? Is their AI so powerful that they need to put in all of these protections? I really don't know. Okay, there's 2 more prompts that are kind of cool. Vector-style movie poster showcasing Bulma riding on Charizard's back, soaring through the skies. Dragon Balls and Pokeballs are scattered in the air around them. The title, Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z Quest for Power, is written at the bottom. That is quite creative. That is a distinct vision. And again, why wouldn't they show people that GPT's capable of that? Like, isn't that even more impressive that it's able to take a small set of keywords and prompt for a coherent vision? Why would they hide that? Now, I remember a few months ago hearing the CEO of Midjourney talk about how prompt engineering was a little misguided in the sense that you shouldn't become an expert in something now that might be completely different in a year. Like, he was never convinced that the way we prompt now is the way we're going to prompt in a year. And I don't know if he envisioned something like this, where a few keywords would then allow the AI to prompt better than we could. I don't know if that's what he had in mind. But seeing GPT do this, maybe that is the end goal of Midjourney, where less and less words will be needed. And I guess the hope is that you can still prompt crystal clear and use a bunch of descriptive words, and you could still be an engineer, but the average person would not need to do that at all. You would just be able to put in your keywords and let the artistic side of things come from the bot as well. And I don't really know how I feel about that. I think making things easier is honestly never the right answer. Like, the amount of joy you can extract from something that's easy, I think, is far less than the amount of joy you can extract from something that is slightly more difficult. I think difficulty is directly related to enjoyment in some way. I mean, I said directly, so no, in a pretty clear way, that satisfaction of completion is paired with difficulty of completion. Like, an adult playing a child's video game is not going to be very stimulated or satisfied when beating the game. An adult playing Dark Souls, which is a very difficult video game in the space of controller and playing games, people get hyped up when they beat a boss in Dark Souls. It is a challenge, and the reward from your brain is quite enthusiastic. I wonder if the same thing is going to apply with art and AI and the space between thought and production. That space is going to close more and more. It's going to become milliseconds where you think of something and the AI produces it. I wonder if our satisfaction is going to decrease in parallel with the decrease in speed of output, or increase of speed of output. You know what I mean? Like if you can get something instantly, are you ever really going to care about what it is? Are you just going to want to see the next thing and the next thing? And any individual piece of creation is going to just appeal far less to you? I don't know. And honestly, I think a lot about this in terms of business and creating something, a product, a comic book, a piece of art that's an asset for your bigger story. I don't think a lot in terms of just recreational use. So maybe I'm a little off base. Please let me know what you think. And have you seen these new deepfake ads that were appearing on TikTok? Like, someone took Mr. Beast's face and said, hey, I'm giving away blah, blah, blah amount of money if you click the link below. And it was a deepfake of him, and it didn't look perfect. It didn't have a lot of emotion, but, you know, it didn't look bad. Just something wasn't quite off. And, you know, if you were watching a video at like 240 resolution, it probably would have looked the exact same. So how many people clicked on that link? And is that the type of thing that's going to spur regulation, legitimate laws and legislation? Because people are going to be tricked by this technology. And I kind of talked about this last week, I think, where something's going to need to happen in order for there to be any safety policies enacted. And I wonder if something like that is going to be one of the catalysts. A celebrity saying, hey, do this right now. Or is it going to be the president saying, hey, do this right now? But the president never said that. And like, I'd like to think that I would never fall for something like that. But whatever, what if I did? And it doesn't even matter about the people who don't get tricked. It is about the people who do get tricked. How many little kids saw that come up on their feed? And like, clearly you should not be allowed to deepfake somebody for honestly any reason but nefarious purposes. See, I don't even know what the ad was really for. I don't know if they were looking for data. I don't know if they were trying to scam people out of money. Like, I really don't know what the purpose was, but it's a pretty bold play right in the middle of the public. Honestly, like, taunting the rest of society. Like, well, there's nothing you can do about it. And in like 7 months, it's going to be even better. And then what if they're able to hack the algorithm in some way that they know the influencers you watch on Instagram or TikTok, and they deepfake specifically for you, and there would be no way to know, and it's like a pandemic of smart digital viruses that can imitate any character that you're into. It could be a sports announcer. It could be a cartoon character. It could be Ash from Pokemon if you're watching Pokemon clips. Then what if it is sophisticated enough to learn more about you and to mimic something that you would click on? That is scary. How do you stop that? Like, how do you stop that without taking down the services themselves? I don't know how many file sharing websites there are. The Pirate Bay is probably the most popular, but that doesn't mean there are not a bunch more that I just don't know about. But you can't shut down the Pirate Bay. It just doesn't work. They've evaded whatever they've needed to for however long. Are some of these AI services going to have to go underground in the same way? Because people are going to be like, look, you cannot let that website continue. Look what it's doing to people. You're giving access to really harmful technology. Like, you could download 3D prints for firearms on the Pirate Bay. That's a pretty big deal. And if that website didn't have a bad reputation, I bet a lot of parents would be like, what the hell are we doing? Why is that so easily accessible? Which the Pirate Bay is extremely easily accessible. Arguably more accessible than something like Netflix. And, that's where these streaming models come into play as competition. You have to make your healthy, safe option as easy to use as the crime. I don't know if are these celebrities going to have to license themselves out to something like OpenAI to where you can create deepfakes of Joe Rogan, but if you try to get him to say something inappropriate, it tells you no, you can't do that. Is OpenAI eventually going to have to let you create Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z crossovers so that you don't go to the crazy evil AI website to do it there? I think it's the same argument as legalizing hard drugs. You legalize it so that people don't go to the sketchy places to do it. You give them a safer place to do it. And there is a whole argument against that, saying you shouldn't be making it accessible to anyone. And I see both sides. And the idea that, well, people are going to do it anyways, so why not give them a place to do it that is safer? Is the same thing going to happen with AI? Next up, I spoke about Corridor Crew, I think once before at least. Not sure which episode. I'll guess number 6, maybe number 5. I think that group of people are great. They make amazing videos. They have such a good vibe and momentum around them in terms of moving forward with all of this crazy technology. But they made a video recently, yesterday or 2 days ago, or actually, I don't know when it was, a few days ago, who cares? And what they did was take old video game footage, or even relatively new video game footage of characters with, video game faces, and they used an AI to make those faces more realistic. I don't know if I used the quotations correct there, but there's an AI that can add a layer of realism to a digital face to make it more photorealistic, for lack of better words. It takes away whatever digital artifacts are there. And granted, the technology isn't that great right now, but a lot of the comments were really negative. The audience was not happy with this Corridor Crew video, and it's the first one I've ever seen where their views did not line up with their audiences. And a lot of the comments were just pointing out how the technology wasn't even that good, and the people in the video were hyping it up and gushing about it, and how a lot of people in the audience preferred the video game version to the AI inserted version. And, it's the type of thing where you wish you could respond to everyone and explain to them what they're missing. And I do understand that the video was a little tacky because it was a sponsored video. They were sponsored by this AI website that could do this little trick. And that in of itself isn't the best look, especially when, maybe the results aren't perfect, but you're hyping them up. Nonetheless, I think the comments missed the point. The truth was definitely somewhere in the middle. The guys at Corridor Crew were hyped up because they see the potential. The comments only saw the result, and they're like, well, it's not even that good. And it just, honestly, it sounded like the comments were making fun of a child. And I spoke about this previously. When people say AI isn't even that good, it sounds like they're making fun of a little kid. Like, why are you so mean to the AI? It's only gonna get better. You saying, oh, well, that AI is not even that good. I preferred the faces how they used to be. Like, if there was a 12-year-old basketball player that could play in college, what if there was a 12-year-old that was tall enough, strong enough, he could play college basketball? Sure, he can't play in the pros just yet. He's not an expert. He's not a professional, but he's good enough to play college. Would anyone talk about that kid as if he wasn't really good? No. Everyone would be hyping that kid up because, oh my God, look how good he is right now. And he's going to continue to grow and he's going to continue to get better. Everybody in the real world would understand that. Granted, there would be some people that, like when LeBron was in high school, people said he was overrated. And I'm just thinking, like, what are you looking at? This guy's the best ever. And you could tell that in high school. When Connor McDavid, and if you don't know who Connor McDavid is, I'm not going to tell you anything about him other than he's a hockey player. Look him up. He's the most clear visual representation of talent. This guy is so much better than every other hockey player. It's night and day. He is in a different league. And I knew that when he was 11 years old. I remember the first clip I ever saw of him on YouTube. I said, oh, that kid's the best ever. When he started playing junior hockey against teenagers, said, oh, that clearly is the best player of all time. You know what? When he's gotten to the NHL, he is clearly the best hockey player of all time. Stat-wise, sure, Wayne Gretzky is never going to get caught. Whatever. It's a different game. It's harder. But in terms of visual wavelengths entering your eyeballs, McDavid's the best of all time. AI is the best ever. It's only going to get better. And when people say, why are you hyping this up? Look, it's not even that good. It takes away all of the grit and the imperfections that really make it human, and it's not even as good as these professional artists working at these studios. It's like right now, it's not as good. But would you tell a little kid that, oh, you're doing great, but you're not as good as a pro? You're not as good as an adult? No, you would tell the kid that they're doing great because they are for them. And maybe, I don't know why that's so hard for people to see AI as a kid. It was just born last year, basically. Maybe a couple years ago, there was like GPT-2 that people had access to, like behind the scenes. There was beta versions of it you could play with. And like, that was like a 4-year-old. And now I think the AI is like 14 or 15 relative to a professional human, a 35-year-old writer who's been doing it for 20 years. But the AI doesn't experience time in the same way as we do. It's not going to be 16 next year. It might be 27. It might advance 10 years within the space of a year. And my point is that I understand why some people were a little turned off by Corridor's video, but their reasoning for being turned off, I think, is so misguided. And there are hundreds of comments with thousands of upvotes. How are there so many people that I think are wrong? Oh, it's just so strange. Like, AI is going to replace every single one of them and none of them are going to see it coming. If you don't think AI is the best, it's just going to pass you by, no problem. And even if you agree that AI is the best and you're prepared, it's still going to pass you by. So maybe there's really no difference between how you see things, but just like, it does shock me how many people are underestimating the talent and have no vision of progress. That people saw LeBron James in high school and said, this guy's not even that good. What? He was the best. And he went on to be the best. And it wasn't a surprise to a lot of people. But to even a greater amount of people, it probably was a surprise. There were people calling him a bum. The guy went to like 10 straight NBA championships. He won like, I don't know, 4 of them or something. But, just, AI's the best. Speaking of AI being the best, have you seen the new Metaverse thing? Lex Friedman did an interview with Mark Zuckerberg in a virtual reality headset. And to be honest, I thought they were in the same room, but then based off some of the conversation, and I didn't listen to the whole thing, I think they were like on opposite sides of the country, but in the metaverse, they looked as if they were in front of each other. And in this like black void space, they could see their faces and then like maybe the tops of their shoulders and then like a little rim around their chest, which basically just means they're just like a floating head. But the fidelity, how realistic this thing looked in real time was phenomenal. And then there's a bit of a hidden magic trick that both of them had sat in some sort of booth and had themselves scanned so that the machine knew their small, intricate facial details, their mannerisms, so that as they spoke, the metaverse was able to recreate as close as possible what they really look like. Now, I don't think if you or I put the headset on, it would be able to do that, but Mark Zuckerberg said that that's their goal in the future, to have a less and less tedious scanning process so that it would be able to do the same thing. But it really made me wonder, like, you know, maybe you see Lex Friedman look up and ponder, or maybe you see something in his eyes, but was that really his eyes? Was he really feeling like that? Or was that the extrapolated emotion that the Meta headset thought he was providing? And like that bit of a disconnect would make me a little worried. I don't care how perfect it is. If something is supposed to represent me and how I feel, even if it's just like a slight degree off, I think that would bother me, because that's not what it is. It's like it's trying so hard to be you that I think it's a little insulting. Obviously, I haven't been able to use it, and maybe I'd feel differently if I could put this headset on and then be in front of a crowd of people who are also at home wearing headsets, but they're also in the room with me because they feel as though they're in the room with me. I don't know. I could see you could definitely see the space for progress where you're working from home, you put on the headset, and now you're in a boardroom and you can collectively with other people look into a virtual space and all witness the same whiteboard that, you know, technically doesn't really exist. But then you take it off and you're just in your room. Like, that's pretty powerful. And I kind of go back to the idea of nobody really wants to wear a headset. Like, that's way more of an ask than you would ever want. But, so you put on the headset and it takes you to a virtual space. I wonder if eventually you'll be able to put on the headset and be brought into a real world place, like front row at a concert or a basketball game. Or can it only take you to virtual places? I don't know, but really trippy. And I don't know. I don't know why it bothers me. Like, mimicking reality so efficiently does feel insulting. It's like, just go there yourself. Just do it yourself. And then the idea of taking off a headset and then realizing you weren't ever really there, that none of it was real, I feel is such a dig at the human heart in a way that I can't really describe. It's quite Black Mirror-ish, that you could be in a swirling vortex of emotion in this virtual space, the digital world, the lights, the sounds, the sensations, your brain thinking you're somewhere, but you take off the headset or the power goes out and you instantly realize that you're not there, that everything is quiet. You take off your headset and you're by yourself. That divide makes me really uncomfortable when I think about it. And maybe that's just me. I don't know. Apparently, OpenAI put out a back to school guide, which basically said to teachers, there's no way to know if a student used AI or not. And I think it's so funny that the company needed to say that themselves for other people to understand. I don't know if that's an authority thing or if the magic is so strange to most people that they need to hear the wizard tell them things. Like, the fact that anyone has ever thought that an AI detector could detect AI really troubles me. What kind of world do they live in? What is their consciousness experiencing that they couldn't realize that it wouldn't work? That, like, just put something that was clearly written by a human. You could write it yourself. You could put in the Declaration of Independence. You put it through an AI detector and you realize that the thing has no idea that a human wrote it. Like, it seems so trivial, but the fact that it isn't trivial for some people, and that there are teachers running students' work through detectors and then claiming that that was the truth is just so, oh, that's so worrying. And, they've had Turnitin for a long time and other detectors for plagiarism. So maybe that's where they get their confidence from, that, oh, these detectors work, so this new detector must be able to detect. But if you just thought about it for a second, how could it ever know that an AI wrote it? There's no digital fingerprint, which I know they're trying to kind of create, at least in Photoshop and digital art spaces, but there's a way around that. Quickly, I'll just explain. If you generate with AI in Photoshop, inside of that file that you save is going to be the signature of the AI. But if you export that as a picture, a PNG, put it back in a Photoshop, save it again, there's no trace of the signature. Like, even that is so easy to get around. If an AI text generator is able to mimic human speech, how could you ever know that an AI wrote it? Like, it makes no sense. Why would anyone ever think it was able to do? Like, what? Why is that even a headline? Why does there need to be a back to school guide that explicitly states there's no way to know? If you're a teacher, maybe that's what bothers me. These people are teachers and they thought the detectors could understand the difference between human speech and AI. Do you know how many ways there are to, like, what? All you have to do is ask GPT to write something, then you could change a few words in it. You could write an outline and then ask GPT to touch it for you. You could ask GPT to write something and then rewrite it with some spelling mistakes. You could literally ask for a B+ level of work. So not to give it away that all of a sudden you're perfect. Like, there are so many people in the world and there are so many companies doing different things with the same technology. I just wish there was some, like, honestly universal voice that could help us all. That really was an oracle, that really was a place for answers, because God, like, we all need to get on the same page. And this book that we're all reading is getting bigger and bigger. More chapters are getting added, and people read at their own pace. And there are amendments in chapter 65 that completely negate chapter 4. But some people are still on chapter 3. We all need to get on the same page. And I don't think we're ever going to be able to do that. Like, oh. Anyways, that wraps it up for today. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. Take care. And I'll see you next time. Peace.